What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and we're back for another episode of the third-person action RPG tutorial series. In this episode, we are going to be going over a press any key screen or an intro screen when we come into our game. It's different from splash screens, like when we're loading up our game and it's displaying those things. This is just a screen to buffer actually loading into the game, into the menu, playing the music a lot of the time, and things like that. I do think it's a very important part of having a game. You'll see pretty much every single game has it. It is very simple, but it's also very fun to create, so I'm very excited to hop into it for today's episode. Now, before we do hop into today's episode, if you want to get caught up in the series and check out how we've done everything from being able to equip things after you pick them up, hit, scan, and overlap interactions, NPCs, and a whole lot more, I'll link you to the entire third-person action RPG tutorial series right here in the top right corner. Alternatively, if you don't care about that and you only care about your press any key screen or menu, then I still recommend you watch the main menu episode that we have. You won't have to watch the whole series to simply implement this menu, but you do want to have somewhere to go. Once the game is loaded, we'll go to this press any key screen, and then after that we want to go to our main menu screen. So if you watch the main menu episode, you'll be able to follow this logic from top to bottom in one go. With that out of the way, we can go ahead and get started. So this is a code and blueprint tutorial series, but since we're going over our press any key screen menu today, we're going to be focusing on the blueprint. A cool thing about the press any key screen menu is that it's actually more important than a lot of people think. Sometimes it is used to check to see if you're on a proper version of the game, not a pirated version, if you can connect to those servers, what profile is signed in to load data on, things like that. So it can have a lot of functionality that's hidden behind the scenes. It's not really shown to the user, but these things are happening. To start out, I want to make our widget or our menu, and to do that we can go to where we create our menus, which in this project is content, blueprints, widgets. We don't have a lot of menus in here, so we don't have a subfolder for them. This will do just fine. Now we can go down to user interface and make a widget blueprint here. And if you're in Unreal Engine 5, you're going to select the parent class for the widget. If you're in Unreal Engine 4, you will just automatically have a user widget as the parent. For us, this is fine though, so we can select user widget, and then we can type in the name, which is going to be press any key menu. And again, this could be your title card or whatever you want to call it. Just name it something that you know what it is. And then open up the widget, and when we're in here, we have the root for the widget. If you're in Unreal Engine 5, you won't have anything here. If you're in Unreal Engine 4, you will have a canvas panel by default. Canvas panel is perfectly fine for this case, so we can go ahead and search for canvas panel and add it, and that will be our root. So whether you're in UE4 or UE5, we're starting with the same element now. And at this point, we can just set it up to look however we want. This is the fun part, the easy part. This part's pretty fun. Do whatever you want with it. I'm going to make an image for my background. I will anchor it to the full size of the parent element. Since our parent element is the canvas, it's going to take up the full size of the screen or the full size of the widget. And we're going to call this background image. We'll set the Z order to be -1, so it renders behind everything. If we put text on top of it with a Z order of 0, it will render on top of this background image. Now, since I set the full screen anchor, you can see these little markers here to indicate that you could update the widget position using these. However, we just want to cover the whole screen. So by default, when you change an anchor, it tries to keep the element that you anchored in the same position it was, and it was initially in the top left corner of this widget when we added the image to the canvas panel. So it applied this offset here to fulfill that, but if we set these to 0 now, it will actually take up the entire canvas panel, which is what we want. Now going back in here, we can change whatever we want about this background image. This could be a black image, it could be an actual photo for your game, it could be hand-drawn art. It's literally whatever you want, just an image that represents what your game is about, or it sets the tone for the game. If this is a horror game, maybe we just want a simple image with simple text. For now, I can simply go to my color and opacity and just set it to black, either 000 with an alpha of 1, or change it here. Maybe I could make it dark gray instead. Or I could actually use an image by going to the brush and changing the image here if I had one. I do have different images I can use. Like for example, I could put my mini-map in here. But this isn't the image I will want for this screen. So for now, just making a gray background for this will work. Now, other than that, I don't have to change anything here. Feel free to if you want to. I'm going to uncheck is variable because I don't need to access this in the graph. The next thing I want to do is make a title or add some text, typically with the name of the game. So if this is our action RPG template or series, then we can add some text indicating that. So I'm going to add text, and I will rename it to be title text. And we can anchor this to the top center, position of 0 on the X and Y. Size, you could either increase this or you can just size to content since this text isn't really going to change. Either method is fine. Sizing to content is quite simple there, but it's up to you. If I was going to guess, I would say something like 750. Let's actually do like 1250. It's probably pretty good. And a size Y of 90 is probably good. For the alignment, I'm going to change it from 0.0 to 0.5 on the X and 0.0 to 0.5 on the Y. This changes the pivot point of the widget or of the text here, which means it changes where the point that all the math, all the offsets are going off of. So typically they start by going off of the top left or the origin of the widget. That's the default origin. When we move the alignment or change the alignment, we're moving the origin of the widget to be the center of it. And let's position this down now since we have manually set a size. So I will position down, that's way too far. Let's do 125. Better. Even 75 would be enough. And now we can change the content text, which is what the text is that's actually displaying here. So I'm just going to call it Shawnthebro's third person action RPG template. Something like that will do the trick. Now we can go down to the appearance and go to the font family and change that if we want, or change the size if we want. I'll make the size pretty big here. A little too big. Let's try 48. More reasonable, although our size needs to be updated of the actual text widget. So if we change the size X now to 1750 looks pretty good. We could just do the whole size of the canvas panel, which is 1920. It's technically a little bit bigger than that, 1921. But if we go to the text here, change the size to 1920, it's going to take up the whole width. And so that will work. Now I'm going down to my font settings again. I'm going to change my outline size to be maybe 4. I think that makes it pop more, which is nice. Change the justification to be centered. So now it's in the center of our widget. And feel free to change anything else that you want. Everything else for me is fine to leave as is. Now I want to add one more thing of text, and this is going to be for the press any key button that we're going to put here at the bottom. You could either add new text and set it up, or just copy this text, paste it back in the canvas panel, and use this text. It's up to you. It really depends on what effect you're going for. So for example, if I choose to anchor this new text at the bottom center and then change the position Y to be 0, and actually I'm going to mimic what I did for this one. So it was 75 for the top one. So I'm going to make this negative 75 for the bottom one. Then we could change the text to say press any key. And I'll put an ellipses there indicating that we're waiting for something. I will change the name of the text to press any key text. And this is being really picky, but I will make the font a little bit bigger. So maybe I will make this the 72 that I initially saw, and I will enable wrapping on this text box, which I can do by scrolling down, go to the wrapping section, and we can either manually wrap the text or auto wrap the text, which will automatically move elements down when they reach the end. This is what it looks like now. We have our press any key text, which is great. Nothing else is needed for this press any key text unless you want to, so feel free to change it. But I like to add a little animation for things that require user input. So you'll see a lot of games have this blinker kind of fade in and fade out to indicate that we're waiting on something from the player. And we can do this here as well. So if we click on animations down at the bottom, or just open sequencer, you can do this in UE4, UE5. It's called sequencer in UE4, and it's called animations in UE5. But really they're the same thing. This is just the updated version. If you don't have this tab at the bottom, that's okay. You don't need to access it from here. You can go to Window, Animations. Again, this could be called Sequencer depending on your version. But one way or another, find that tab. And at this point, we can press plus animation to add a new animation. And we can call this press any key text fade. And let's call this fade in, just so we're explicit with what we're doing here. And if we click on this animation, we can then create the animation. And the way this works is we add tracks to this animation. And these tracks edit properties of the widgets or of the elements on this menu to then comprise our animation. So if we press plus track, we can select either one of the widgets here or make a new type. We want to select our press any key text. And you can do it on the slot as well. Either of these will work in our case. If you do it on the slot, it will allow you to modify the element in the slot and the animation will still be functional. So whatever you want is up to you. We can go the basic route of just doing the element itself. So press any key text. Now this is the widget we're modifying. We can add a track to this to pick the specific property that we want to edit. We could do this a few ways. We could do it by changing the color and opacity. We could do it by changing the visibility. Of course, choose whatever you want. For this basic example, I am going to choose the color and opacity. And then we can set the individual fields in here. Now, when you change one in here, it will affect the widget itself. However, the way an animation works is we want to change these properties over a certain period of time. So this is our timeline. So this is what the widget looks like, or the text looks like at this given moment. This number is in seconds, so this is from 0 to 5 seconds it takes to complete this animation. We can move this little slider here to cut off excess, so say we only want it to be 2 seconds. Now I've trimmed this down to be 2 seconds long. And then we can add keys at the given time to indicate that we're going to modify this property. So for example, if I go 2 seconds in and I add a key on color and opacity, I don't really have to add it to the entire section. I can add it to just the alpha because that's all I'm going to be modifying. You'll see I automatically made a key for my entire color and opacity when the animation started. So it's taking the default color of this text and it added one to the alpha here as well. It's these little red dots. So this indicates that the alpha is going to change at the 2 second mark. What we're going to do is apply this fade gradually over that 2 second period until it is no longer visible. So if we click on this little red dot here, we can edit the properties of this key. And we're going to set the alpha to 0 or 0.0. So see now if I scrub this timeline, I can actually see the animation playing. If I press the play button here, I can watch it happen in real time. So that looks pretty good. We want it to come back gradually as well, so you could either copy this and make another animation for it, or you could add this as part of the animation. So for example, I could extend the length of the animation to 4 seconds, like if I add another key here at this point, you'll see we have one at the 2 second mark, or 2.15 second mark. I want to keep it right at the 2 second mark, and then we have a new one here that I just added at the 4 second mark. And I could set the alpha back to 1.0. And then if I play this animation, it's going to fade out and then fade back in. Now, because we did do this as one animation, I actually am going to change it back to press any key text fade. So apologies for that. Just wasn't sure which route I was going to go, but you could split this up into 2 animations or just do it in one like this. Obviously, do whatever you want. But now we have a basic animation for this that we can choose to play whenever we wish. At this point, we can go into our event graph. And we don't need the event tick or the event pre-construct. In this case, we can use event construct to play our animation. If you don't have this node in here, simply just type event construct like this and select it and you'll find it here. Now, once you have this event, it's very simple to play the animation. What we need to do is go to the widget that is going to be playing the animation, which is our press any key text. We need to mark it as a variable. This allows us to access it within the graph. In event construct, we can grab our animations in the variables section. They automatically go into a subcategory called animations. We can simply drag it into the screen here, or you can search for it like any other variable. Get press any key text fade. Then once you have it, you can drag off of the animation and type play animation. And this is the basic play animation function call that has everything in it. This will let you do whatever you want with it. So in this case, we're going to be playing the animation we passed in, and we want it to start at time 0. Start from the beginning. Number of loops to play, we can set to 0 to indefinitely loop. Play mode of forward just means it's going forward, not in reverse. and ping pong will go back and forth. That's actually another way we could have handled it. We could have just done opacity from 0 to 2 seconds, fades it, and then we ping pong it so it goes back to 1.0 opacity and it's visible again. We can keep the current playback speed of 1.0, or you can speed it up if you want. It is a little bit slow. We don't need to restore state here because we're going to let this loop indefinitely, but this would be if you wanted to get everything back to where it was for this widget after the animation had completed. So we can compile and save. And we need a way to spawn this menu. So in our main menu level, we have the level blueprint, which you can access by clicking on the graph and open level blueprint. Or if you're in Unreal Engine 4, you will have a button that says blueprints up here that you click on and then go to open level blueprint. In the level blueprint, what we were doing is on begin play, so when the level is ready to go, it has been loaded, we were creating the main menu widget and adding it to the viewport. Now what we want to do is add our press any key screen, or any key menu, to the viewport. This is the one we're creating. So now when I play the game, you'll see that we are on our press any key menu and our animation is playing, which is great. But when we press things, we can't actually go anywhere because we don't have any logic to do so. So if we go back to press any key menu one more time, we need to now have a way to remove this widget and spawn the main menu widget when we're done with this. So if we go to Edit Project Settings or your Enhanced Input Actions, whatever method you're using to capture inputs, find out if you have an any key input. Now for us at the current time, we don't. We can add one, and this will be an input that gets tracked everywhere, and we can just perform logic when any key is pressed. This is a perfect instance of it. So we can add an action mapping. We can call it any key, which is literally any key is pressed, and any key on a keyboard or gamepad will trigger this. Any key. So just is input registering. If you're using enhanced input, this will still work. Just make sure you set your mapping to any key, your binding, I should say. And then we can close this. Now, if you right click and search for any key, you can find your input action. You can also just directly grab the any key and do the logic in here instead of having an action mapping for it. However, I do think having an any key button could actually be useful just in general, since we can map it to functions and things like that. But either way will work. You can either use your any key. This is the built-in one. And then we have our any key, which is the one where it's one word under action events right here. It says input action. Either way, you would do the same thing. What you would do is drag off of pressed of any key and create widget. And we're going to create the main menu widget, which is what we were doing in the main menu level blueprint before. We select main menu, and then we can drag off the return value of the widget and add it to the viewport so we can actually see it. And once this is created, we can remove from parent, which is going to remove the current widget from the parent. The parent is the viewport, so we won't be able to see the press any key menu or screen anymore. And now if we come in here, click on the main menu, and I click, that counts as an input. So we go to the main menu, and from there we can proceed as normal. Now, as I said, you can use the built-in one. You don't need to use an input action one. It really is up to you. I think the input action way is more proper. Then we can define specific logic and bind it where we want, but this is a very specific case in our game, so use your best judgment. I will keep that, and I'll move these over and maybe down a little bit. That way there's some space, but that is our graph. Then we can compile and save. There you go, guys. That's how you can create a press any key screen or menu in your game. I hope you enjoyed watching this episode and creating menus for your game. It's incredibly fun to do, but it's also very useful. You can have a lot of usage in the future. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing and checking out the Patreon, YouTube membership, and Discord subscriptions to help benefit the channel. All those things help me greatly, and I really appreciate the love and support that all of you have given. Thank you so much to the wonderful members that have supported me. I appreciate it, guys. If you ran into any problems following this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. There is a link in the description, and I would be happy to help you out. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.